It's like a way of saying you're cool, you're all right, you're tough. I'm not saying I'm like criminally bad.
17 years after Michael Jackson's passing, Neverland Ranch is still making headlines in ways no one expected. What was once his private world has now become the center of new discoveries and renewed questions that are shocking fans and critics alike. From hidden corners of the estate to reports that have reignited old debates, the story of Neverland is far from settled. Every new detail seems to add another layer to a place already surrounded by mystery and controversy. Join us as we break down what has recently come to light and why it's getting so much attention all over again. A controlled child star. Michael Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, into a large family of 10 children. Life in the Jackson household was shaped early by structure, discipline, and a strong focus on music. His father, Joe Jackson, played a central role in that environment. Joe worked in a steel mill, but at home, he became the manager and driving force behind his children's musical training. He believed talent alone was not enough, so he pushed his children with strict rules and high expectations. From a very young age, Michael's life was not like most children his age. Instead of spending time in schoolyards or playing freely, he spent long hours rehearsing with his brothers. Joe Jackson was known for being extremely demanding. He paid close attention to every detail, from timing and vocals to dance steps and stage presence. Reports and later accounts from family members suggest that discipline was often harsh, and mistakes during rehearsals were not taken lightly. This created an environment where performance and perfection became the main focus of daily life. Joe Jackson was not only a father, but also the manager of the Jackson 5, the group formed by his sons Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, and Michael. This meant that family life and professional life were deeply connected. There was no clear separation between home and work. Practice sessions could happen at any time, and expectations followed the children everywhere they went. For Michael, who quickly stood out as the most talented performer, the pressure was even greater. By the time he was just 5 years old, Michael had already stepped into the spotlight as the lead singer of the Jackson 5. His voice, timing, and natural stage presence made him stand out, even among his older brothers. This early responsibility meant he was performing songs for large audiences, while still very young. Instead of slowly growing into fame, he was placed directly into it, with all eyes focused on him. As the Jackson 5 grew in popularity, their success brought even more pressure. Signed to Motown Records in 1969, the group quickly rose to fame with hit songs like I Want You Back, ABC, and I'll Be There. These songs reached #1 on the charts and made the group national stars. Michael became the face of their success, and his image was everywhere, even though he was still a child. And as his talent grew, so did the pressure that would shape the rest of his life. Escalating isolation. As Michael Jackson grew older, he began to move away from the Jackson 5 and step into a solo career. This was an important shift in his life. While the group had given him fame at a very young age, Michael wanted more control over his music, his image, and his future. He was no longer just part of a family group. He wanted to build his own identity as an artist. His first major solo success came with the album Off the Wall, released in 1979. This album showed the world a new side of Michael Jackson. It was more mature, more polished, and more personal than his earlier work with his brothers. The album included hit songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You. Both songs became huge successes and played constantly on radio stations around the world. Critics praised his voice, his rhythm, and his ability to mix different music styles. Even with this success, Michael did not feel fully satisfied. While Off the Wall made him a major solo star, he believed he could achieve something even bigger. He wanted his music to break records and reach every corner of the world. This growing ambition pushed him to aim higher, both creatively and professionally. He was no longer focused only on success. He was focused on perfection. In 1982, Michael released Thriller, and everything changed. The album became a global phenomenon and went on to become the best-selling album of all time. It produced several massive hits, including Billie Jean, Beat It, and the title track Thriller. Each song brought something new, and each one dominated the music charts. The album did not just sell music, it changed how people thought about music itself. The music videos from Thriller also played a huge role in his rise. They were not simple recordings of songs. They were carefully produced visual stories that combined dance, fashion, and special effects. Billie Jean became especially famous because of Michael's live performance at the Motown 25 television special in 1983. It was during this performance that he introduced the moonwalk, a dance move that became one of his most iconic contributions to pop culture. And as his fame reached its highest point, his private world was slowly becoming more isolated and uncertain. An identity shift. As Michael Jackson moved into the late 1980s and early 1990s, his career continued to stay strong, even as public attention on his personal life began to increase. His album Bad, released in 1987, proved that he was not just a one-time success. It produced several major hits like Bad, Smooth Criminal, The Way You Make Me Feel, and Man in the Mirror. These songs kept him at the top of the music world and showed that he could continue to dominate the charts even after Thriller. Later, in 1991, he released Dangerous, which also became a major success. Songs like Black or White and Remember the Time kept him in the global spotlight. At this point, Michael Jackson was not just a musician. He was a worldwide figure whose every move was watched closely. But during this time, people began to notice changes in his appearance. His skin tone gradually became lighter over the years. This led to many questions and rumors in the media. Michael explained that he had a skin condition called vitiligo, which causes patches of skin to lose pigment. He also said he had lupus, another medical condition that can affect the skin. According to him, these conditions caused uneven skin color, and he used makeup to even it out. Over time, as the condition spread, his appearance changed more noticeably. Despite his explanation, many people were confused and skeptical. The media began to focus heavily on his changing look. Along with this, there were also reports of multiple cosmetic surgeries. His nose, jawline, and facial structure appeared different compared to his earlier years. Michael said that he had only a few procedures, mostly to help with breathing or minor adjustments. However, public speculation continued, and his appearance became one of the most talked about parts of his life. At the same time, people noticed changes in his voice and behavior during interviews. He often spoke softly, sometimes in a childlike tone, and seemed uncomfortable in public settings. His interviews became less frequent, and when he did appear, he often gave short or careful answers. This led to more questions about his personality and emotional state. As the media attention increased, so did the labeling. Newspapers and tabloids began creating a simplified image of him that focused on his unusual behavior and appearance rather than his music. Terms like Wacko Jacko started appearing in headlines. This nickname became widely known and contributed to a growing divide in how people viewed him. For many fans, Michael Jackson was still a genius artist who had changed music forever. But for others, he had become a figure of mystery and confusion. The contrast between his musical talent and his personal behavior created constant debate. Some saw him as misunderstood and unfairly judged. Others saw him as strange and unpredictable. And as questions about his identity deepened, his world was slowly shifting in ways that few people fully understood. The Neverland Ranch. In 1988, Michael Jackson purchased a large property in Santa Barbara County, California. It covered about 2,700 acres and was located in a quiet, private area surrounded by nature. This land would soon become one of the most talked about estates in the world. Michael named it Neverland Ranch, inspired by the fictional world from Peter Pan, a story about a place where children never grow up. For Michael, this was not just a home. It was a space he designed around his personal feelings and memories. He had often spoken about missing out on a normal childhood because of his early fame. So, Neverland became his way of building an environment that reflected the joy and freedom he felt he never fully experienced. Over time, the property was transformed into something far beyond a normal estate. It was developed into a place filled with entertainment features usually found in amusement parks. There were Ferris wheels, roller coasters, bumper cars, and even a private train system that moved across the grounds. The idea was to create a space where fun and play were always available, no matter the time of day. Neverland also included a zoo with a wide range of animals. Visitors and staff reported seeing elephants, giraffes, llamas, tigers, and many other exotic animals living on the property. These animals were part of the larger environment Michael was building, where nature, fantasy, and entertainment were all combined in one place. Inside the main house, there was also a private movie theater where films could be watched in comfort and privacy. Some rooms were decorated with bright colors, toys, and themed designs that made the space feel playful rather than formal. There were candy-themed areas as well, designed to create a cheerful and childlike atmosphere throughout parts of the estate. One of the most well-known parts of Neverland was Michael's pet chimpanzee named Bubbles. Bubbles often traveled with him and lived on the property. The chimp became a symbol of Michael's unusual but deeply personal connection to the idea of innocence and companionship. Their bond attracted media attention and became part of the public image of Neverland. The ranch was also heavily staffed. It operated almost like a small private world, with cooks, cleaners, security guards, animal caretakers, and assistants working on the property. Entry was tightly controlled. Guests had to be invited, and their movements were often guided by staff. This level of control made the estate feel organized and carefully managed at all times. Many of the people who visited described Neverland as a place that felt separate from everyday life. It was designed to be calm, private, and focused on enjoyment. Michael often invited children, friends, and celebrities to visit, and these gatherings were usually centered around entertainment, games, and shared activities. For Michael, Neverland seemed to represent more than luxury or fame. It reflected a deeper emotional need to recreate a sense of childhood that he felt was missing from his early years. The entire estate was shaped around comfort, imagination, and escape from pressure. It stood as a place where fantasy and reality blended together in a very personal way for him, and it remained one of the most defining parts of his life. And as Neverland grew more complex, it also began to attract attention that would later change everything around it. The inner circle. Michael Jackson's personal world was shaped heavily by the people closest to him. Even though he was one of the most famous figures in the world, his emotional life was very private and limited to a small group of trusted individuals. Over time, this created an inner circle that had a strong influence on how he felt, how he behaved, and how he connected with others. A major part of Michael's emotional background came from his relationship with his father, Joe Jackson. From childhood, Michael described Joe as strict, controlling, and emotionally distant. Joe pushed him and his siblings into constant rehearsals and performances. While this helped build their careers, it also created fear and pressure. Michael later spoke about feeling uncomfortable and even scared during his early years. These experiences stayed with him and shaped how he viewed authority and trust. In contrast, Michael had a very different relationship with his mother, Katherine Jackson. She was seen as calm, supportive, and caring. Michael often expressed love and trust toward her. She represented emotional safety in his life, someone he could turn to when things felt overwhelming. Even as an adult, he stayed close to her and relied on her presence for comfort and stability. His relationship with his siblings, especially Janet Jackson, was also important. Michael and Janet shared a bond through their shared experiences of growing up in the same musical family. They understood the pressure of fame from a young age. Even though their careers often kept them busy in different directions, they maintained contact and support for each other over the years. However, the demands of fame and personal distance sometimes limited how often they could be together. Outside his family, Michael's closest relationships were often with celebrities who understood fame from the inside. One of the most well-known of these was Elizabeth Taylor. She and Michael developed a close friendship based on trust and mutual understanding. Elizabeth had also experienced fame from a young age, so she understood the pressure and isolation that came with it. Michael often spoke about her with deep respect and affection, and she was one of the few public figures he felt truly comfortable around. Another well-known friendship was with actor Macaulay Culkin. They became close in the early 1990s. Their friendship included visits, time spent at Neverland Ranch, and shared activities like watching movies and playing games. Michael said he felt relaxed around children because they did not judge him or expect anything from him. Macaulay later described their friendship as innocent and said Michael treated him kindly. Despite these relationships, Michael's circle remained very small and controlled. He trusted only a few people fully and was careful about who he allowed into his personal life. Many people saw him surrounded by staff, assistants, and guests, but emotionally, he was still isolated. Being physically around people did not always mean he felt connected to them. He often avoided large social events and crowded environments. Instead, he preferred controlled settings where he knew everyone around him. This helped him feel safer, but it also limited his ability to form new or open relationships. Over time, this created a pattern where he depended heavily on a small group of trusted individuals. This emotional dependency meant that the people in his inner circle had a strong influence on his daily life and decisions. At the same time, it reinforced his sense of separation from the outside world, even when he was constantly surrounded by attention and fame. And as his circle grew smaller and more controlled, his world outside it became even more distant and uncertain. The 1993 allegations. In 1993, Michael Jackson's life changed in a major way when serious allegations were made against him for the first time. This moment became one of the most important turning points in his public story and marked the beginning of long-term legal and media pressure that followed him for years. The case centered around a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler. Jordan came into contact with Michael through his father, Evan Chandler, who was a dentist in Los Angeles. At first, the relationship between Michael and Jordan seemed friendly. Jordan and his family spent time with Michael, and he visited Neverland Ranch. During these visits, there were sleepovers, shared activities, travel, and gift exchanges. Michael often welcomed children into his private world, which he described as innocent and caring. Over time, Jordan's father began to feel uneasy about the relationship. Evan Chandler reportedly became suspicious of the closeness between his son and Michael. This concern led him to question Jordan about what had happened during his time with the singer. According to reports, Jordan later spoke to a psychiatrist, And during that session, he made claims that triggered legal action. The psychiatrist was required by law to report the allegations, which led to official investigations. Once the claims were made, both the police and Child Protection Services became involved. Investigators began looking into Michael's life and his activities with children. Neverland Ranch, his private estate, was searched by law enforcement. They collected photographs, documents, and other materials that they believed might help the investigation. Michael fully cooperated and denied all accusations, stating that he had never harmed any child and that he was being targeted unfairly. As part of the investigation, Michael also underwent a forensic examination, including documentation of his body, because of claims made by the accuser. His legal team argued that the descriptions provided did not match physical evidence. These procedures were highly publicized and added to the intense media attention surrounding the case. As the investigation continued, the case became more complex. In early 1994, Michael agreed to a financial settlement with the Chandler family. Reports suggested the settlement was around $23 million. It was also made clear that this agreement was not an admission of guilt. It was a civil settlement intended to end the lawsuit and avoid a long court process. However, the criminal investigation remained open for some time afterward. Eventually, prosecutors decided not to file criminal charges. One of the main reasons was that Jordan Chandler refused to testify in court. Without his testimony, the case could not move forward to trial. This legal outcome meant that Michael was never criminally convicted in connection with the allegations. Even without a trial, the impact on public perception was immediate and strong. The media coverage was intense, and the story dominated headlines around the world. For the first time, Michael Jackson's image shifted from a global music icon to a figure surrounded by serious controversy and suspicion. News outlets and tabloids began focusing heavily on his personal life, and public discussions about him became divided. During this period, negative labels and jokes about him became more common in the media. The nickname Wacko Jacko started appearing more frequently in headlines, reflecting how quickly public perception was changing. While some people believed in his innocence, others began to see him in a very different light. This case marked the beginning of a new and difficult chapter in his life, one where legal issues and public scrutiny would continue to follow him closely. And as this first major controversy unfolded, even bigger challenges were still waiting ahead. The trial. Between 2003 and 2005, Michael Jackson faced one of the most public and intense legal battles of his life. This period centered around allegations involving a 13-year-old boy named Gavin Arvizo and became a global courtroom event that drew attention from around the world. The connection between Michael Jackson and the Arvizo family began through charitable outreach. Gavin had been seriously ill with cancer, and Michael had met him during efforts to support sick children. Michael was known for visiting hospitals and inviting children with illnesses to events at Neverland Ranch. Over time, Gavin and his family spent time with Michael, including visits to Neverland, where activities and gatherings were held. In 2003, Michael appeared in a documentary called Living with Michael Jackson, created by journalist Martin Bashir. The film showed Michael speaking openly about his life, including comments about children staying over at Neverland. He described sleepovers as innocent and caring experiences. However, the documentary caused strong public reaction. Many viewers were uncomfortable with his statements, and the media coverage that followed increased scrutiny on his behavior. Soon after the documentary aired, Gavin Arvizo and his family accused Michael of serious wrongdoing. Formal charges were filed, including molestation, conspiracy, and giving alcohol to a minor. These accusations led to a criminal trial that began in 2005 in Santa Maria, California. The courtroom became the center of global media attention. Reporters, fans, and protesters gathered outside every day, turning the trial into a worldwide spectacle. Inside the courtroom, the case was highly emotional and detailed. The prosecution presented witnesses, including Gavin and members of his family, who described their experiences and made allegations against Michael. Their testimony formed the core of the case. The prosecution also tried to support their claims with additional witnesses and past media reports involving Michael's earlier controversies. Michael's defense team strongly challenged these claims. They argued that the Arvizo family had a history of making false accusations and that their testimony was not reliable. The defense also pointed to inconsistencies in statements and suggested that financial motives were involved. A key part of their strategy was to revisit earlier allegations from 1993, using them to question patterns in how accusations were made and handled. One of the most important defense witnesses was actor Macaulay Culkin. He testified that he had spent many nights at Neverland Ranch and never experienced or witnessed anything inappropriate. His statement was used to support the argument that Michael's relationships with children were not harmful. This testimony became widely discussed in the media. The trial lasted for months and was covered constantly by news outlets. Every detail was analyzed and debated. Public opinion became deeply divided. Some people believed Michael was being unfairly targeted, while others believed the accusations were serious and credible. The media attention added even more pressure to an already intense legal process. On June 13, 2005, the jury delivered its verdict. Michael Jackson was found not guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted with emotion, and supporters outside celebrated the decision. Legally, he was cleared of the charges. However, the impact of the trial went far beyond the verdict. Michael appeared physically and emotionally drained throughout the process. After the trial ended, he left the United States and spent time living abroad. He also withdrew from public life and reduced his public appearances significantly. Neverland Ranch, once his personal retreat and creative space, was no longer used as a home. Michael later expressed that it no longer felt like a place of comfort. His departure from Neverland marked a major emotional shift in his life, signaling the end of an important chapter. And after the courtroom silence faded, his story continued to move in unexpected directions that kept the world watching. Neverland after silence. After the 2005 trial ended, Michael Jackson's life changed in a major way, and so did Neverland Ranch. What was once his personal escape and creative space slowly began to lose its purpose. The estate that had once been full of activity, music, and visitors became quiet and distant from the public eye. Following the trial, Michael left the United States for a period and spent time living abroad. He stayed in different countries, including places in the Middle East and Europe. During this time, he avoided public attention as much as possible. His focus shifted away from large public appearances, and he lived a more private and controlled lifestyle. Because of this change, Neverland was no longer used as his main residence. The ranch, which had once been active with guests, staff, and entertainment features, was left without its central figure. Over time, this led to a noticeable decline in activity across the property. Areas that were once full of life and movement became still and unused. The amusement features that had defined Neverland also began to fade. Rides and attractions were no longer maintained in the same way, and some structures were gradually dismantled or left unused. Without regular care and constant activity, parts of the estate started to look aged and neglected. The train tracks, rides, and themed areas that once symbolized joy and imagination slowly lost their function. Staff numbers were also reduced over time. With fewer people working on the property, large sections of the ranch became quiet. Maintenance slowed down, and the estate no longer operated like the carefully managed environment it once was. The sense of a controlled private world began to disappear. Eventually, Neverland changed ownership. The property was sold and later rebranded under new management. With this change, it moved away from being a private residence designed around Michael Jackson's personal vision. Instead, it became a real estate asset with a different purpose and identity. The new owners made changes to the land and structure, focusing more on restoration and commercial use rather than fantasy design. As the years passed, Neverland also changed in how people saw it. What was once described as a dreamlike home built around imagination slowly became known as an abandoned landmark tied to controversy and public debate. The meaning of the place shifted in the public mind. It was no longer just a home, but a location filled with history, questions, and strong opinions. At the same time, media interest in Neverland did not fade. In fact, it often returned whenever discussions about Michael Jackson resurfaced. Journalists and documentaries revisited the property, focusing on its design, its past use, and the events connected to it. Neverland became a symbol that was repeatedly reinterpreted depending on the story being told. There was also growing attention on certain parts of the estate that were no longer accessible or had been closed off. Reports and discussions began to focus on what might have been left behind, what was removed, and what was never fully examined. These ideas added to the mystery surrounding the property and kept public curiosity alive. Over time, Neverland shifted from a living, active space into something more symbolic and debated. It remained physically real, but its meaning changed depending on who was looking at it and what part of its history they focused on. If you found this breakdown interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into stories like this. And hit the bell icon so you don't miss what we cover next.